Citizens of the United States, the American mind is a scientific mind. It was born in the age of reason. It was forged in the crucible of the Enlightenment. It was shaped by the conviction that truth is not handed down from authority. It is discovered through observation, tested through experimentation, and validated through evidence. The American mind is the mind that asks questions. What is the nature of government? What are the rights of man? What is the proper relationship between the citizen and the state? These were not rhetorical questions. They were scientific questions. They were hypotheses. They were tested. They were debated. They were proven. The American mind is the mind that created a nation, not by conquest, but by argument, not by decree, but by consensus, not by tradition, but by reason. The American mind is the mind that believes in evidence. This nation was founded during the Enlightenment, the period when human beings dared to think for themselves, when they dared to question the divine right of kings, when they dared to believe that reason could guide human affairs, when they dared to doubt. The American mind is the scientific mind. The American Revolution was not just a political event. It was an intellectual event. It was a product of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment taught that truth is discovered through reason and evidence. Authority must be justified, not assumed. Tradition is not an argument. The human mind can understand the world. All human beings are capable of reason. Doubt is the beginning of wisdom. The founders were products of the Enlightenment. Thomas Jefferson was a scientist. He was an architect, an inventor, a student of natural history. He believed that knowledge could be discovered, not inherited, not decreed, but discovered. He wrote the Declaration of Independence, a document that is itself a scientific proposition. All men are created equal. Benjamin Franklin was a scientist. He was a printer, a diplomat, a man who flew a kite in a thunderstorm because he wanted to understand electricity. He believed that curiosity was a virtue. He believed that doubt was the beginning of wisdom. He founded the American Philosophical Society, an institution dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge through observation and experimentation. John Adams was a lawyer, a philosopher, a man who studied the history of governments because he believed that the past could teach us about the future. He believed that the principles of government could be discovered through reason, not inherited, not decreed, but discovered. The American experiment is an Enlightenment experiment. It is the proposition that a nation can be governed by reason, that a people can govern themselves, that authority can be limited, that rights can be protected, that justice can be achieved. The American mind is the scientific mind. But the founders were not perfect. They were products of their time. They could not see the full implications of their own principles. Thomas Jefferson wrote that all men are created equal, while owning over 600 enslaved human beings. He could not see the contradiction. He was blind to it because the fiction of race had not yet been fully exposed. The evidence was not yet available. George Washington spoke of liberty while holding human beings in bondage. He could not see the contradiction. He was blind to it because the fiction had not yet been tested. The founders were not evil. They were limited. They were limited by the knowledge of their time. They could not have known what we now know. But we do know. We have the evidence. We have the tests. We have the results. And we have a duty to follow them. The founders believed in reason. They believed in evidence. They believed in the scientific method. If they had seen the evidence, if they had known that race is a failed hypothesis, they would have rejected it. They would have demanded the abolition of racial classification. They would have fulfilled the promise. We must do what they would have done. We must follow the evidence. We must accept the conclusion. We must act on the truth. The American mind is the scientific mind. Now, let us examine the fiction in the light of the scientific method. The scientific method is the gold standard for determining what is real. It is the procedure that has given us antibiotics, spaceflight, and the internet. It is the procedure that has cured diseases, explored the cosmos, and unlocked the secrets of the atom. It is the procedure that has advanced human knowledge more than any other in history. The scientific method requires observation, hypothesis, prediction, test, analysis, conclusion. Let us apply the scientific method to race. We observe that human beings have different skin tones, hair textures, and facial features. We observe that these traits cluster geographically. We observe that people treat these differences as meaningful. But observation is only the beginning. It is not the end. It is the starting point of inquiry, not the conclusion. The American mind observes. It does not stop at observation. The hypothesis is human beings can be divided into discrete biologically meaningful categories, races, that correspond to observable physical traits and determine capacity, character, and destiny. This is the hypothesis that Linnaeus proposed in 1758. This is the hypothesis that Kant, Blumenbach, Morton, Gobineau, Grant, and Stoddard built upon. This is the hypothesis that OMB Directive 15 codified in 1977. This is the hypothesis that the American people have been asked to believe for 4 centuries. This is the hypothesis of the fiction. If the hypothesis is true, genetic variation should cluster by race. There should be sharp breaks between groups. Traits should correlate consistently with categories. There should be measurable, replicable differences in capacity, character, and destiny. These are not subjective judgments. They are empirical predictions. They can be tested. They can be proven true or false. The American mind predicts. It does not assume. The Human Genome Project tested the hypothesis. The 1000 Genomes Project tested the hypothesis. Every major genetic study of the last 50 years has tested the hypothesis. 93% of human genetic variation exists within populations, not between them. Only 7% exists between populations. There are no sharp breaks between groups. There are no natural borders. Race attempts to draw hard, categorical lines on a continuous gradient. The gradient does not have lines. The hypothesis fails the test. The American mind tests. It does not believe without evidence. The architects of the fiction did not have access to the genetic evidence. They could not have known, but we do. We have the evidence. We have the tests. We have the results. The hypothesis of race has been tested. It has been analyzed. It has been found wanting. The hypothesis is rejected. The American mind analyzes. It does not cling to failed hypotheses. Race is not a scientific category. It never was. It never will be. Race does not even make it past the hypothesis test. The American mind concludes. It does not avoid the truth. The hypothesis of race fails the scientific method. It is not a scientific conclusion. It is not a scientific finding. It is not a scientific discovery. It is a hypothesis that was proposed in the 18th century and was disproven in the 21st century. But the hypothesis lives on. It lives on in the census. It lives on in the forms. It lives on in the algorithms. It lives on in the law. The hypothesis of race is a failed hypothesis that has been codified as law. It is a hypothesis that does not survive scrutiny. It is a hypothesis that does not survive the evidence. It is a hypothesis that does not survive the scientific method. Race is a failed hypothesis. The scientific mind has a duty. The duty is to follow the evidence. The duty is to accept the conclusion. The duty is to act on the truth. The scientific mind does not cling to failed hypotheses. The scientific mind does not defend disproven theories. The scientific mind does not codify fiction. The scientific mind tells the truth. The American mind is the scientific mind. It was born in the age of reason. It was forged in the crucible of the Enlightenment. It is the mind that believes in evidence. It is the mind that dares to think for itself. The American mind has a duty to reject the fiction. The American mind is the mind that asked questions, demanded evidence, rejected authority, followed reason, founded a nation on argument, not force. The American mind is the mind that examined the hypothesis of race, tested the hypothesis of race, founded the hypothesis of race to be false, rejected the hypothesis of race. The American mind is the mind that demands the abolition of racial classification, demands the end of the fiction, demands the fulfillment of the promise. The American mind is the scientific mind. Citizens of the United States, the American mind is the scientific mind. The scientific mind does not cling to failed hypotheses. The scientific mind does not defend disproven theories. The scientific mind does not codify fiction. The hypothesis of race is a failed hypothesis. It fails the observation. It fails the hypothesis. It fails the prediction. It fails the test. It fails the analysis. It fails the conclusion. Race does not even make it past the hypothesis test. The American mind must act. The American mind must demand that OMB rescind Directive 15. The American mind must demand that Congress pass Amendment 28. The American mind must demand that the state stop classifying citizens by a failed hypothesis. The evidence is clear. The path is mapped. The only question is whether we have the will to act. Citizens of the United States, the American mind is the scientific mind. It was born in the age of reason. It was forged in the crucible of the Enlightenment. It was shaped by the conviction that the truth is discovered through observation, tested through experimentation, and validated through evidence. The hypothesis of race is a failed hypothesis. It fails the scientific method. It fails the evidence. It fails the test. Race does not even make it past the hypothesis test. The American mind must reject the fiction. The American mind must demand the abolition of racial classification. The American mind must demand the end of the Ponzi scheme. The American mind must demand the fulfillment of the promise. The fatigue is total. Watch me hug a current, gaining altitude. There is no deterrent. I'm in the headwind where the truth's apparent. The eagle has climbed. The eagle has spotted the target. The eagle has folded its wings. The eagle has descended. The eagle has struck. The evidence is clear. The path is mapped. The only question is whether we have the will to act. I await your verdict.